Hi, everyone. It's Saturday, July 9th, I think. I'm back in New York and back at home. And I wanted to, as I get more of these, I'll get better at them. But I wanted to talk today about something that was sort of came to me because of what happened to me in my journey back here from St. Thomas Virgin Islands yesterday. The topic of today's talk is black on black love and the illusion that economics equals innocence. So, innocence, I want to talk a little bit about that, is an interesting thing to think about as we look at what's going on in the world today with all people, but most particularly with black people, because innocence is something that is fundamentally like a pass in society. It's like a lottery ticket. It's like you use it, you get the winning number when you are seen as innocent because you get to pass. It's often the difference between life and death. And innocence is something that is very, very, very rarely conferred upon people who are different in a majority minority culture because difference equals guilty. And that's something we have to remember. But one of the things that I want to talk about today in terms of this equation of economics equals innocence is what it means in terms of the ability of black people to be engaged in fully participating in black on black love. Because the issue of class or economics or class stratification, which is something that has always lived in our community, is a problem because we have a notion that black people with money are somehow better and therefore more innocent and therefore get a pass than black people without money. Now, to illustrate my story, my point. Yesterday, coming back into the country, I had to go through the U.S. Customs, and I was greeted by a very pleasant middle-class African-American West Indian woman who was a U.S. Customs agent. And when asked me how I was doing, et cetera, I said, well, given the current circumstances, I'm doing as best as I can. Now, for those of you who know me, I am, to everyone, a big black man. And what happened in that short time that I am standing in front of a black woman holding a gun, responsible for my safe and entry back into the country that I was born in, is that a conversation ensued. And she talked about her feelings regarding the problem that black people blame too many things on race. And I thought, well, this is a peculiar conversation to be having with a U.S. Customs agent in St. Thomas, a predominantly black territory of the United States, at a time like this. And I said, please explain yourself. And she says, well, you know, like the guy that was killed because of the cassettes. And I said, oh, that guy. She says, yeah, well, first of all, she says, he was a big black man. Did you see him? He was really a big black man. I was like, well, I saw him on television. And she said, well, you know, if you look very carefully at the film, you see that he was trying to move his hand and he was going for the gun. And if I was in that situation, I would have shot him too. Now, I was petrified because she didn't even see me, a very well-dressed, articulate African-American man entering the country after she questioned me about how was my stay, where did I stay, what did I do, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And somehow, because of the perception of my economic status, I was given a pass. It also gave her permission to say something to me, to speak to me from her truth, her damaged and twisted and sordid truth that she holds as a person who lives in this society and who's getting the same messages about economics, equality, and innocence. Now, that U.S. Customs agent, as an African-American woman carrying a gun, I said to her, let me ask you a question. I said, if he had been a big white man on the ground, I said, do you think this would have played itself out in the same way? She says, well, no, probably not, but we can't blame race for everything. I said, well, then let me ask you another question. Do you think that the average white man in his situation whatever his economic situation was. I mean, he was a father, he was a husband, he had 2 kids who he was trying to raise, would choose using a way of making income, which is selling CDs on the street. Let's talk about why he actually is in a position in his life that the only way he can provide for himself and his family is by selling CDs. And she says, well, I said, have you ever seen a white man selling CDs on the street? 2 at a time, 3 at a time. And she said, no, I can't say that I have. I said, but that has nothing to do with race, right? And so she looked at me quietly. And I'm reminded of, the quote from William J. Wilson of the Brookings Institute. And I think he framed what I want to begin to touch on here when he said, and I quote, segregation by income amplifies segregation by race, leaving low-income blacks clustered in neighborhoods that feature disadvantages along several dimensions, including exposure to violent crime. And therein lies the problem of black-on-black love. Because if I look at you as not worthy of a pass because you are a member of this black community, yet you are not entitled to the privileges of being a member of the black community because of your socioeconomic status, then any kind of excessive force from within the community or outside of that community is justified in my mind. And she was right in her statement. It has nothing to do with race, but it does have to do with our own classism and the ways in which we extricate and exploit and eliminate our own people based upon our perceptions of their innocence, their class worthiness. And so this gentleman who died in the street wasn't just black, he was poor. Now, the media doesn't want to really deal with that. The media doesn't really want to talk about this whole implication of economics and the equation of economics and the perception of innocence. But it's something that we, if we really are interested in creating a more beautiful society, cannot turn our attention away from. Someplace scouring around the internet is a really interesting little social experiment where they put a little young white girl in sort of pauper's clothing and they put her in the center of a village, and she just stood there and people taunted her, and until finally she ran out of the village, a 6-year-old actor crying in tears. And then a few minutes later they placed her right back in the same square, in the same piazza, but she was dressed as a very well-dressed young girl who appeared to be lost. And it was amazing the number of concerned citizens who came to her aid, who did everything they could do to attempt to rescue and help her, who saw the innocence in this little 6-year-old girl that they failed to see when she was dressed as a poor and possibly homeless child, someone who arguably is in much more dire straits for any number of reasons. So once again, the media has fallen short in its humanity toward all of humanity, and violently short in regards to black people by not telling the whole truth about why low-income black men and women, black Latinos and other groups of people are likely, much more likely, to be target of violent crimes in our society that is perpetrated not only across racial identities, but even within. And I think it's one of the ways in which we need to pay attention, as I talked to yesterday, to the attention that we're paying. Because one of the things that I want you to remember is that the most dangerous hour of the day in the United States of America, a time of day when no lives matter, where ratings matter more than humanity, is the time that we all gather to watch the primetime daily news. So once again, I'm going to ask you to, starting today and moving forward, when your primetime news comes on, take the first 15 minutes, which is the first 15 minutes of trauma, of all of the no lives matter messaging that happens in our society against outside groups happens, and use that time to turn off your social media, your television, your radios, and take that time to connect. I'm talking about a protest that I'm calling Turn Off and Connect. And by connect, I mean we want to demonstrate the collective power and the economy of black and brown people paying proper attention, paying beautiful attention to black and brown people and people of all cultures and races and backgrounds and identities in a way that lifts us all up. And we must start by paying attention to the narratives that the media is force-feeding to the world about the value of all lives based on the color of your skin, the gender of your body, the accent of your voice, the religion that nourishes your soul, and the people who you feel you are meant to love. That's all I have for today. If this is helpful to you, please send a response. As I go forward, I'll organize this more, but please let other people know about these daily talks. This is talk number 2. I'm doing this because it's all I can do and because I love you. Take care. Bye-bye.